this is Larry Anderson again. Today we're going to look at Daniel chapter 11, verses 36 to 45. We're going to look into the future. All the events described so far in chapter 11 are past. The intricate details of the conflicts between the Seleucids and the Ptolemies were fulfilled literally exactly as Daniel had predicted. So detailed are the facts that skeptics have denied that the book was written by Daniel in the 6th century BC, and they conclude that the book must have been written during the time of the Maccabees in 168 roughly to 134 BC, after the events took place. Here's what we know, though, that the God who knows the end from the beginning was able to reveal details of forthcoming history to Daniel. And we see it consistently throughout the book. In verses 36 to 45, a leader is described who is introduced simply as the king. And some suggest this is Antiochus IV, Epiphanes, and that these verses describe additional incursions into Israel. However, the details given in these verses weren't fulfilled by Antiochus. And so true, Antiochus was a foreshadowing of a king who will come, as we see from comments in chapter 8, verse 25. But the two aren't the same. One is in the past, and the other is in the future. The coming king, the little horn from chapter 7, verse 8, and the ruler from chapter 9, verse 26, will be the final ruler of the Roman world. His rise to prominence by a satanic power is described in Revelation 13, verses 1 to 8, where he is called the Beast. According to John, Revelation 17, 12 to 13, he will gain authority not by military conquest, but by consent of the 10 kings who will submit to him. Starting in Daniel 11, 36, the prophecy moves from the near to the far. The events recorded in these verses will occur during the final 7 years of the 77s that are referred to in chapter 19, verse 24. The coming king will be independent of any authority apart from himself. He will do as he pleases. Midway during his 7-year reign, he will exercise the political power given to him by the 10 kings who will be will have elected him. We see that in Revelation 17, verses 12 to 13. He will also take to himself absolute power in the religious realm, magnifying himself above all gods and defying and speaking blasphemously against the God of gods. He opposes and exalts himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, and even sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be a God. He will speak against the Most High. The world will be persuaded to worship him as God by the miracles the false prophet will perform in his name. We see this in Revelation 18, verses 11 to 15. He will succeed in spreading his influence around the world, both politically and religiously, referenced in Revelation 13, verses 7 and 8. The duration of this king's rule has been determined by God. He will be successful as the world ruler during the time of wrath, the 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation. But at the end of that period, the judgment determined by God will be meted out to him. And we have this is referenced throughout the Old Testament and in Revelations 19, verses 19 and 20. So here we have the reference to the God, to the gods, or God Elohim of his fathers. And some have concluded that this ruler will be a Jew, since the Old Testament frequently uses the phrase the God of our fathers to refer to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But since this individual will be the final ruler of the Roman world, the little horn of the fourth beast from Daniel 7, verse 8 and 24, he must be a Gentile. He's showing no regard for the gods of his father, meaning that in order to gain absolute power in the religious realm, this king will have no respect for his religious heritage. He'll set aside all organized religion, and nor will he regard any god. He will set himself up and exalt himself as the sole object of worship instead of worshiping the true God. So this is a picture of what many refer to as the Antichrist. And instead of depending on God's, he will depend on his own power that he received from Satan, referenced in Revelation 13:2. And by that power, he will demand worship of himself. The fact that he has no regard for the one desired by women suggests that he repudiates the messianic hope of Israel. Perhaps many an Israelite woman had longingly wondered in those days if she would become the mother of the coming Messiah, the nation's Savior and King. Now in verses 38 and 39, the Antichrist will honor a god of fortresses. That is, he'll promote military strength, and because of his political and religious power, he'll be able to accumulate vast wealth. The god unknown to his fathers or his ancestors who will give him strength may be Satan, and that's what we generally assume. Though this king will come to power offering peace through a covenant with Israel, he will not hesitate to use military power to expand his dominion. And he will be helped by a foreign god. Those who submit to his authority will be put in positions of power. He will greatly honor them, and his ability to disperse favors, distribute the land at already reduced price will gain him a great following. It's so interesting because, everything gets set up in current time. And I was thinking, in an election year, politics, the people who position themselves, maybe they're not going to run for president, but they want to position themselves in such a way that maybe they're picked for a role in the cabinet. Maybe they're picked for some special recognition or special place when that person comes into power. It's true back then, as this satanic person, as this Antichrist person gathers strength, people will be drawn to him for what he offers, his ability to dispense favors, his ability to give people positions. The events in verses 40 to 45 will transpire at the time of the end, and that is they'll occur in the second half of the 70th of 7 years. And it refers the king, first back to the king that's introduced in verse 36. In verses 40 to 45, every occurrence of he 7 times, him 4 times, and his 3 times refer to this coming king. He will have entered into a covenant with the people of Israel, binding that nation as part of his domain. Any attack then against the land of Israel will be an attack against him, with whom Israel will be joined by covenant. The king of the south will attack Israel. Some suggest that this will occur in the middle of the 70th of 7 years. More likely it'll take place toward the end, the second half of that 7-year period. The king of the south, referred to as the king of Egypt, there seems to be no reason to relate this king to the south, to some other nation. In fact, Egypt is mentioned twice in verses 42 and 43. In this invasion, Israel will not come alone, but will be joined by the Libyans, the Nubians, these nations referred to elsewhere as Put and Cush, maybe nations in Africa. However, it's more likely that Put refers to Arab nations in the Sinai area, and Cush to nations in the Persian Gulf region. And the cross-reference for that is Genesis 2:13 and comments there. Simultaneously, in this invasion of Israel by the king of the south, Egypt will be an invasion by the king of the north. Some Bible scholars equate this invasion with one of Gog and Magog, or Gog will come from the far north, as referenced in Ezekiel 38:15. Others say the Battle of Gog and Magog will occur in the first half of the 70th seven, and thus before the two-pronged invasion referred to in Daniel 11:40. They suggest that the name Gog and Magog will occur when Israel is at peace. And according to that view, there's a difference between Gog, who will come from the far north, and later an invasion that will be headed by the king of the north. Either way, the king of the north in verse 40 is certainly not one of the Seleucid kings of the north referred to in the verses 5 through 35. This invasion has no correspondence to historical events. This is clearly a look into the future and where those battles will come from, where the occupation will come from. The king of the south and the king of the north will fight against the Antichrist. Israel will be occupied, and many Jews will flee, seeking refuge among the Gentile nations. There's reference to that in Revelations 12:14-16, chapter 11, 40-43. When the Antichrist hears of this invasion, he will move his army from Europe to the Middle East, sweeping through many countries, referenced in verse 40, like a flood. He will move quickly into the land of Israel, the beautiful land, and his first strike will be against Egypt, referenced in verses 42-43. For Egypt and her Arab allies are the ones who will initiate the invasion of Israel, on Israel. On this occasion, the king will not conquer the territory of Edom, Moab, and Ammon, now included in the present kingdom of Jordan, but he'll gain control over many countries. And the Antichrist will hear alarming reports from the east, probably referring to an invasion of a massive army of 200 million soldiers from the east of the Euphrates River, cross-referenced in Revelation 9:16, and from the north, probably another attack by the king of the north. Enraged, the Antichrist will set out to destroy many of the invaders, and then he will occupy Israel and will pitch. The picture is that he pitches his royal tents between the seas, and that is between the Dead Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, in the beautiful holy mountain, probably referring to Jerusalem. Posing as Christ, the Antichrist will set up his headquarters in Jerusalem, the same city from which Christ will rule the world in the millennium, referred to in Zechariah 14:4 and verse 17. The Antichrist will also pose as Christ by introducing a one-world government with himself as the ruler and a one-world religion in which he is worshipped as God. But Daniel prophesies that God will destroy the kingdom of this king, and he will come to his end, referenced in Daniel 7:11 and verse 26, at the personal appearance of Jesus Christ on this earth. And that's referenced in chapter 19 of Revelation 19, verses 19 and 20. So we get this apocalyptic scene that Daniel prophesies, that this Antichrist, and some people believe that the Antichrist is a specific person. Some people believe that it's a political ideology, or something like that. But what we know is that this Antichrist, and we know he's anti to Christ. We know that he comes up to set up his own religion, to be the ruler of the entire world, that he'll amass vast wealth, that he will draw a large army to him, and he will set about during these 7 years to conquer everything that he needs to conquer, to attract those who would be willing to be attracted to him without war, to draw people around him. But the sole purpose is that he becomes God, that he becomes the one ruler of the earth. And Daniel prophesies all of this. And what we have that's so powerful is we have the accuracy of Daniel's early prophecies that we get in those first verses. And now we get these prophecies of the future. And we should pay attention to them. We should pay attention to a politician that claims that they can save the whole world, that they can fix everything. We need to pay attention to what God is doing and stay faithful no matter what, to who God is, to who Jesus is, to his promises to us, and know that in the end, when Christ appears, he will fix everything. He will rectify everything. We'll have a new Jerusalem on earth. We'll have a millennium of Christ's reign on the earth, that those who are faithful, who are following Christ, will reign with him, that we have those promises, and we have the promise that's through the accuracy of the past prophecies, we have confidence in the future prophecies that we're called to pay attention to. So there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of complication, but what we see is that God keeps his word. What we see is God's faithfulness. And we get a picture of this movement of the Antichrist that will be so attractive. Who doesn't want a world of peace? Who doesn't want a world of prosperity? Who doesn't want one ruler who can fix all of our problems and take care of everyone and all of those things? But when we see this ruler coming, we know that he's not of God. We know that he's not submitted to the Lord, that he's about being his own God. We know that Satan has a hold on this earth, and God is calling us to be faithful. So that's Daniel chapter 11. And I hope this little summary gives you some insight into what Daniel's trying to teach us. I love Desert View. I'm grateful for you guys. God bless you.